There are places the light forgets, stories the world tries to bury, but here, we remember them all. Welcome to the channel where nightmares breathe, legends return, and truth is often more terrifying than fiction. Real encounters, dark folklore, cursed places, and the things that still linger in the shadows. If you dare to look deeper, hit that subscribe button, because the horror has only just begun. Before the cliff, before the headlines, before the word ritual was ever whispered, there was Jeannette, 16 years old, a daughter, a sister, born in Springfield, New Jersey in 1956. To understand what happened to her, we have to go back to the beginning, before the police reports, before the symbols, before the fear spread like smoke through town. We have to go back to the quiet, the kind of place where you left your keys in the ignition and your windows cracked in summer, where local kids played baseball in the street and wandered home by dusk, with scraped knees and laughter trailing behind them. Springfield wasn't the kind of town that made headlines. It was suburban, ordinary, but in the shadow of Watchung Mountain, stories were always whispered. About shadows that moved in the woods. About animals found dead in patterns. Stories, of course. Older kids talked about the cliff they called the Devil's Teeth, until the dog came home with her arm. Jeannette was changing. That's what everyone said. Not in a bad way, but in a quiet, internal one. She had pulled away from old friends, some said. Started reading the Bible more, attending prayer meetings. She talked about feeling like she was meant for something. Her family said she was growing, that she had found God. Others said she was afraid of something, though no one could say exactly what. There's a moment, I think, in every story like this, where everything seems normal, but something underneath is shifting. Jeannette's moment came that summer. August 7th, 1972. That morning, Jeannette left the house to visit a friend. She took a shortcut one locals warned kids to avoid. She never came home. She vanished. No scream, no note, no signs of a struggle, just silence. Weeks passed, and the town began to breathe in something it hadn't felt in years, fear. Because deep down, everyone knew you don't go near Devil's Teeth, and Jeannette had. 6 weeks later, her remains were found. But the story only got stranger from there. September 19th, 1972. It had been 6 weeks since Jeannette DePalma vanished. No leads, no sightings, and no answers. The DePalma family was desperate, the police were quiet, and then came the dog. A large German shepherd belonging to a local man named Eugene Lemke came home with something clamped in its jaws. It wasn't a stick, it was a human arm. Police followed the trail into the woods behind Hodale Quarry, a jagged patch of land just west of the Watchung Reservation. It was steep, filled with shale and overgrowth, dense enough to hide something or someone for weeks. And at the top of that bluff was Jeannette, or what was left of her. The scene was unlike anything they expected. Her body lay stretched across the ground, partially decomposed, but eerily undisturbed by scavengers. Around her were small wooden crosses, some crudely nailed, some made of twigs. Rocks were stacked around her head, forming a kind of triangle. A Bible sat near her feet, damp from rain, but open deliberately. Others say there were signs of animal sacrifice nearby. Bones, perhaps, arranged in circles. Police were quick to deny that, but the story spread anyway. The cliff where she was found had a name long before Jeannette, the Devil's Teeth. Kids called it that because of the jagged shale protrusions like open jaws in the earth. But older locals, they remembered other reasons. Strange symbols, burned patches in winter snow, and stories of screams heard in the early hours of morning. But back to the scene. Her body showed no visible signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stab marks, no broken bones, no clear cause of death. Her clothes were intact. To authorities, that raised an uncomfortable possibility. Could she have died of natural causes? Overdose? Exposure? But her family pushed back. Jeannette didn't use drugs. She was strong, healthy. She would have yelled for help. And what about the crosses? The Bible? The rocks? The official cause of death? Undetermined. No autopsy photos were ever made public. The coroner's notes have long since vanished from the town archives. Some say they were lost in a flood. Others aren't so sure. As investigators scrambled, something darker began to take hold of Springfield. Speculation. People whispered of cults, of rituals, of things performed under moonlight in the reservation. And soon, Jeannette's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a warning, a symbol, an omen. The local press latched onto it quickly. Headlines read, "Satan worship in the hills." And did cultists kill Jeannette? A wave of paranoia spread. Churches held candlelight vigils. People started locking their doors, keeping their children inside. But something else happened too. People stopped talking. Witnesses withdrew. Neighbors claimed they didn't see anything, even if they had. And the deeper the police tried to dig, the quieter the town became. When strange things happen in the woods, when a girl is found surrounded by symbols with no clear cause of death, most towns double down on the truth. Springfield shut its mouth. That silence, it still echoes today. Next up, we dig deeper into the symbols found at the scene. We'll hear from people who lived near the cliffs, and those who swore they saw fire light up there weeks before Jeannette was found. And we'll ask if someone placed those symbols. Who were they trying to speak to, and who was supposed to answer? Stay with us. You're listening to The Devil's Teeth. When investigators climbed the bluff above Hudal Quarry, they expected to find tragedy. What they didn't expect was ritual. There were symbols, arranged carefully, deliberately, and whether they were meant to honor or desecrate, no one could say. Around Jeannette's body were rough-hewn crosses, one made of nailed planks, others of sticks and branches. Some said they looked like altars, others said they looked like warnings. Others swear it was revelation. The Bible beside her feet was damp but open. The page number was never released publicly. Some believe it was Psalms. Whatever it was, it felt chosen. Now we need to talk about the rocks, arranged in triangular patterns, near the head, beneath the arms. Triangular arrangements have long held spiritual meaning, both sacred and profane. In the occult, they can represent invocation or containment. In Christianity, they symbolize the Holy Trinity. Was Jeannette being honored or held? Was someone trying to speak to her, or to what took her? Police didn't release photos to the public. They said they didn't want to encourage copycats. But locals whispered about what they saw, or thought they saw. One man claimed he walked by the site 2 days before police arrived and saw candles stuck in the dirt. A teenager claimed there were animal bones, arranged like pentagrams. A local woman said she saw a group of figures dressed in robes weeks earlier, chanting just after midnight. No names were given, no reports filed. But the stories kept coming, and then the silence began. Police stopped giving updates. Reporters were discouraged. Her mother, Florence, said they were given only vague updates. No autopsy results, no concrete cause of death, no answers. And witnesses, those few who did speak, quickly went quiet. Jeannette's own family reported being stonewalled by investigators. Even the pastor who led Jeannette's memorial service told local press, "There's more to this than anyone's willing to admit. Why would an entire town, an entire system go quiet?" There are theories. Some believe local officials were afraid, that they didn't want to incite panic, strange moods, a place to smoke, to hide, to dare each other to stay past dark. Others think someone powerful was involved, that the silence was intentional. A few believe it wasn't fear of man that kept lips sealed, but fear of something older. Let's talk about the cliffs. Locals had always called them cursed, a place of bad air. One woman who swore her daughter came back from the woods mute for a year. Before Jeannette, they were known mostly to teens, but older residents knew the stories went further back. Some claim the land was once used for rituals, long before Springfield existed. One local historian, whom we'll call Terry, agreed to speak with us under the condition we not use his last name. What he shared chills me still. Terry told us about strange events reported in that area going back to the 1940s. Vanished pets, burned trees in strange shapes. They used to blame it on hill people, vagrants, later Satanists. But Terry believed it was older than that the ground itself was wrong, not cursed, but tainted. He said, the land there doesn't take kindly to the living. After Jeannette's body was found, rumors exploded. But what's strange is how quickly they faded. No follow-ups, no arrests, no additional leads. The symbols were never explained. The Bible's page was never revealed. The rocks never collected as evidence. It was as if, once Jeannette was buried, everyone agreed to move on. Together, almost like they were afraid to keep remembering. But not everyone forgot. There were kids now, adults, who remembered things from that summer. Shadows moving in the woods, fires at the cliff. Some even claimed to know who was up there that night. We tracked down one of those voices. Her name is Leah. And next, she tells us what she saw in the trees and why she never went back. You're listening to The Devil's Teeth. Stay with us. Some stories don't want to be told. They linger in the corners of memory. They sit silent for decades. Then one night you hear something and it's all back. Tonight, we introduce you to someone we'll call Leah. She grew up in Springfield. She knew Jeannette, not well, but enough to remember the way she laughed, the way she changed, and the night she disappeared. Leah was near the cliffs. This is her story. I haven't talked about this in years. Most people who were around back then either left or pretend it never happened, but I remember it. I remember all of it. Leah lived 3 blocks from Jeannette. Quiet people, church people. They weren't close. Jeannette had started hanging out with different people. But Leah noticed something strange that summer. She said, God speaking louder now. Not physically, but like someone carrying something too big, too old. Jeannette looked tired. Leah said. She stopped making eye contact. Like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. I remember I asked her once if she was okay. I thought she was just into Bible camp or whatever, but it was the way she said it, like it hurt. Then came the night Leah went up to the cliffs. The air smelled burnt, even though there was no fire. August 7th, 1972. It was a dare, that's all it was. Just a stupid dare from a group of kids bored out of their minds. They snuck out after 10 p.m., walked through the quarry trails with flashlights, and climbed toward the ridge. Leah said, everything felt off that night. And the deeper we walked, the quieter it got. Like the trees were listening. They reached the clearing, the spot everyone called the mouth. They dropped to the dirt, hiding behind shrubs and logs. The cliff opened there, jagged rocks reaching up like teeth, hence the name. And in the center, something was waiting. Leah said, and twigs. Dozens of little crosses stuck into the ground. It looked like a campfire site at first. But there was no fire, just stones arranged. One of them had red string wrapped around it. I'll never forget that. Then the chanting started. Distant, rhythmic, male voices, low. One of them turned and steered straight into the woods. The kids froze. Flashlights clicked off. Like they already knew we'd be next. They didn't dare move. And what they saw next stayed with Leah for the rest of her life. They didn't stop until they were back near Leah's porch. Hearts pounding, dirt on their knees, Mark crying. Leah said, 3 people walked into the clearing. 1 held a candle. They were wearing dark robes, looked like blankets, really. 1 knelt. The other 2 started drawing in the dirt. Leah and her friends didn't stay long. Something spooked one of them, a boy named Mark, who stepped on a branch. Something they'd done before. The crack was deafening. The 3 robed figures stopped. All at once, Leah swore the figure smiled. It wasn't like a gotcha smile, it was pity. The kids ran. They never told anyone, not their parents, not the cops. They were just kids, but a few weeks later, when the news broke that Jeannette's body had been found up on that same cliff, they knew. We didn't see her body that night, but I think she was there. I think they were doing something. And when the police showed up, they cleaned it all up, just enough to make it look like nothing happened. When we asked Leah why she never came forward, she paused, then gave one word, fear. Not fear of the police or the town, but fear that talking about it would bring something back. Something she left behind on that cliff. Leah left Springfield in 1978. She never returned. She doesn't want attention. She doesn't want to be a hero, but she wanted her story told. Because sometimes silence isn't safety. Sometimes it's a cage. Next, we go deeper. Why were the police so quick to close the file? Why did the local papers suddenly stop printing? And what happened to the coroner's notes? We'll dig into the investigation or lack thereof next. Because silence leaves a trail too. This is the Devil's Teeth. Stay with us. When Jeannette DePalma's body was found, Springfield changed. So did the police. What began as a missing persons case quickly became a quiet file. A quiet file kept in a quiet office, until it quietly vanished. Tonight, we explore what was done and what wasn't. What was said and what was buried. Because sometimes, it's not just the crime that's chilling. It's how hard someone tries to erase it. The Springfield Police Department never made an official arrest in Jeannette's case. No primary suspect was named publicly. No leads announced. And strangely, no detailed autopsy report was ever released to the press or the family. Her death was officially labeled suspicious, but with no indication of foul play. And yet, she was found on a cliff, surrounded by crosses and rocks, with her belongings scattered as if placed by hand. Let's go back. Her remains were exposed to weather, insects, and animals. But by all accounts, the body was intact, her clothes undisturbed. Jeannette had been missing for 6 weeks. How does that happen? How does a body lie uncovered in the New Jersey summer and remain untouched? One theory suggests she wasn't there the whole time, that she was moved. A former police officer from a nearby township who requested anonymity told us this. There were murmurs. Nothing official, but the scuttle was that she was killed elsewhere and left at the cliffs later, just before that dog found her. That would mean someone knew the area, knew how to hide a body, and knew when to place it. Then there's the coroner's notes. Official records indicate Jeannette's cause of death was undetermined, but over the years, the physical report has disappeared, gone from Springfield archives, Gone from Union County records. Gone even from family requests. How does an autopsy report vanish? Flood damage was blamed, but internal memos uncovered decades later suggest something else. A note scribbled by an office assistant in 1973 reads, "Hold file, sensitive, do not copy." Even the Bible found near her body, one of the most unusual pieces of evidence, was never entered into official record. To this day, the police cannot or will not confirm what scripture it was open to. One officer, now retired, recalled that the page was ripped and marked, but not relevant. Not relevant. Imagine being Jeannette's mother, asking what your daughter's final moments look like, and being told that the evidence left at her feet meant nothing. Local newspapers covered the case in bursts. The Elizabeth Daily Journal published a front-page story, "Is Satanism behind girl's death?" But days later, the editor printed a retraction, said the article had speculated beyond the facts. And then the stories stopped. No updates, no features, no follow-ups. Reporters who pursued the case claimed they were discouraged from digging deeper. One even said their editor warned, "Let sleeping dogs lie." And then there's the missing box. In the early 2000s, the Union County Prosecutor's Office was asked to produce the case file. They couldn't find it. An entire box of documents, statements, evidence logs, photographs was gone. Some believe it was misplaced. Others think it was destroyed. Either way, a case can't breathe without a file. And Jeannette's file was suffocated. There's a name you won't find in the police reports. Others claimed she spurned him. Richie, a boy from Jeannette's school, some said he had a crush on her. In a separate incident years later, he was arrested for violent behavior. Jeannette's family asked if he was ever questioned. And whoever needs to talk is scared. The answer, no comment. When asked in 1998 if he thought the case would ever be solved, Jeannette's pastor said, "Not unless someone talks." What does that mean? What is everyone so afraid of? A killer? Or the thing the killer served? Was it human fear or something deeper? We'll look into those questions next, because Jeannette's story isn't the only one. Others have gone missing, and not all of them stayed that way. This is The Devil's Teeth. Stay with us. Jeannette DePalma's death wasn't the only strange thing to happen in Springfield. Not before, and certainly not after. What if I told you there were others? Other missing persons? Other bodies found near the Watchung Cliffs. Other signs, crosses, stones, symbols left behind in the dirt. Most never made the news. Most were explained away, but when you pull them together, something starts to form. A shape. A pattern. And if you've been listening closely, you already know it's not just about Jeannette anymore. Let's go back 11 years. A woman named Margaret Geiger went missing while walking her dog through the Watchung Reservation. She was last seen near the north entrance of the trailhead. Her body was found 2 days later in the underbrush. The coroner called it exposure. But Margaret was an experienced hiker. Her shoes were missing. Her rosary beads were tangled in her hair. And no one could explain the symbols etched in the bark above her head. Fast forward to 1968. A 17-year-old named Robert Schultz was found in the same area. His friends said he wandered off during a group hike, said he heard something and followed it. When they found him hours later, he was curled in a ball, crying. He never spoke again. Just 400 yards from where Jeannette's body would later be found. 2 years later, he was committed to a psychiatric facility in Newark, where he died from unknown causes. The incident was never linked to anything, but the location? Then, in 1975, 3 years after Jeannette's death, a jogger stumbled onto a clearing filled with dead birds, not decomposing fresh. Dozens of them arranged in a spiral pattern. Animal control was called. They said the birds had been poisoned, but no poison was ever found. And more importantly, no one ever claimed responsibility. Why am I telling you all this? Because horror doesn't happen in isolation. They said the figures moved in a slow circle, chanting. At the center of the circle, a small fire and what looked like a doll made of bones. They didn't even tell their friends until years later. It spreads. It echoes. And if you follow the echoes long enough, you begin to hear the same whispers. In 1982, a young couple picnicking near the cliffs reported seeing a group of people in robes, then fire crackling, then silence. They left before getting a closer look. No report was filed, because even then, Springfield didn't want to talk about it, and most people were happy to forget. You might be wondering if this is true. If there's a pattern, why hasn't it been investigated? Why hasn't it been exposed? The answer is simple. It has. But every time someone tries, the evidence disappears. Like it did with Jeannette's autopsy, like it did with the 1975 bird case, like it did when a local priest, Father Harold Lemay, tried to organize a meeting in 1974 to discuss occult activity in the area. Red pins for deaths, blue for disappearances, black for animal findings. The church quietly reassigned him 2 weeks later. He died in a car accident that winter. Maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe there's no connection. But even coincidences have patterns, and patterns leave shadows. We spoke with a local librarian, Nancy Dean, who's kept a private file of unexplained activity in the area for over 40 years. When he was found, he couldn't remember anything. Just kept repeating. She showed us her map. There were over 30 pins, and nearly all of them were within 2 miles of Devil's Teeth. She said, "It's like something's claiming the ground, and every few years it feeds." It's worth noting these events don't stop in the past. There were reports as recent as 2001. A hiker named Daniel Sykes went missing for 3 days in the reservation. The teeth opened and captured something no one else saw. His case was classified as a fugue state, temporary amnesia brought on by stress. But his boots, covered in red clay, found only near the cliff base. We've reached out to local law enforcement. Few would return our calls. Those who did denied any connection. But that's the thing about silence. Sometimes it hides fear. Other times, it hides guilt. And occasionally, it hides something far worse, the truth. Next, we follow one final thread, a local artist who claims to have sketched the cliff before Jeannette's death. She called it the thing under the trees. And when we show you her drawing, you'll understand why we never forgot it. This is the Devil's Teeth. Stay with us. Art has always been a reflection of the unseen. What we notice in our peripheral vision, what we feel when no one's watching, and sometimes what we don't even know we've witnessed. In this segment, we explore the work of someone who may have seen the truth about the cliff before anyone else even knew to look. Her name was Catherine Stokes, and she drew something impossible. Catherine grew up on the south edge of Springfield. A quiet girl, homeschooled. Her parents owned a bookstore. She was, by all accounts, ordinary. But when she turned 16, something changed. She began sketching at night, alone, mostly trees, rocks, deer. Then the sketches got stranger. Woods that didn't look quite real, rocks shaped like teeth, and something she began to call simply her. We were able to track down one of Catherine's surviving sketchbooks, held by a distant cousin who asked to remain anonymous. The book is dated July through October 1972. The final pages were drawn 2 weeks before Jeannette DePalma's body was found. What they show is deeply unsettling. One page shows a clearing and overhead view. Stones arranged in a triangle. A figure in the center, arms outstretched, face blank. At the base of the drawing, Catherine wrote in smudged graphite, "She's waiting again." Another sketch, even darker, shows 3 figures standing in a half circle. Their bodies are detailed, but their heads, blank ovals. No faces. Above them, drawn in red pencil, a symbol resembling a hook surrounded by spirals. We couldn't trace the symbol to any known occult reference. But when we showed it to one of our folklore consultants, she paused, then said, "That's not a symbol. That's a sigil, a personal mark, a calling card." Catherine never claimed these were based on real events. In fact, she rarely spoke about her work at all. But one neighbor remembered something chilling. She recalled Catherine sitting on her porch in the middle of the night sketching furiously. When asked what she was drawing, Catherine said, "I don't draw it, she shows me." Weeks later, Jeannette was found. When news broke, the neighbor visited Catherine. Catherine had burned the sketchbook she'd been using. When asked why, she simply replied, "She's done with me now." Within a year, Catherine left Springfield. She never returned. She lived in Maine for a while, then California, then finally vanished from public record in 1991. Her family says she took a job in Alaska. No contact since. No forwarding address. So what do we do with Catherine's drawings? Do we write them off as artistic coincidence? Or do we consider the possibility that some people are more open, more sensitive to what the rest of us refuse to see? Psychologists refer to this as liminality, the state of being on the edge, not quite here, not quite elsewhere. People in liminal states often experience overlapping realities. Sleepwalkers, visionaries, prophets, and perhaps artists. One final drawing in the sketchbook stands out. It's labeled September 2nd, 1972, 14 days before Jeannette's body was discovered. It shows a body on a cliff, arms outstretched, surrounded by crosses. We showed it to Jeannette's cousin, who agreed to speak off record. She began to cry, said the body looked posed, the same way Jeannette was described at the scene. We'll never know what Catherine saw or didn't see. But when a person draws the future in ink and burns the evidence after the fact, that's not coincidence. That's a confession. Next, we explore the long silence that followed the 70s, how the town tried to bury the story, and how new residents started hearing things too, because stories never stay dead. They just wait for the right ears. This is the Devil's Teeth. Stay with us. Springfield, New Jersey. a place where lawns are trimmed, porch lights flicker on at 7 sharp, and kids play hopscotch without knowing where the blood once fell. But towns don't forget. They pretend. They rearrange the furniture, repaint the walls, build over the bones. After Jeannette DePalma was found on the cliff in 1972, Springfield didn't scream. It swallowed. And for a while, it seemed the town had gone back to sleep. But it was never asleep. It was waiting. In the early 1980s, new families moved into the area. Developers sold land near the reservation as quiet, natural, and untouched. But they never mentioned the quarry, never mentioned the cliffs, and certainly never mentioned the girl whose bones were found among the rocks. Still, people began to notice. And it started with sounds. A woman named Darlene moved to Springfield in 1983 with her husband and 2 sons. They lived just a half-mile from the reservation trails, low, repeating phrases she couldn't understand. At night, she'd hear voices outside the bedroom window. One night, she stepped out onto her porch. She saw a man standing at the tree line, not moving, not smoking, just standing. He was gone by morning. Darlene wasn't alone. Another resident, Tony, claimed his dog would refuse to walk past the old fire trail near the quarry, growling, whining, tail between its legs. He thought it was coyotes until he found the stone spiral, rocks, and a perfect coil, right in the middle of the trail. No boot prints, no tire marks, nothing but the stones. Tony never walked that trail again. Then came the dreams. A high school student named Maria began having night terrors in 1986. She saw a woman with no face standing in a triangle of rocks. In her dreams, the woman would say nothing. She would only reach out. One night, Maria woke up outside barefoot, standing in her backyard. In her hand was a small wooden cross. When her parents contacted the school counselor, they were told Maria's experiences were stress-related, night walking, sleep disorders. But when we reached out to Maria, now living in Vermont, she told us something she hadn't told her parents back then. The dream stopped when I left town. But sometimes I still see her, not in dreams, in mirrors. It wasn't just whispers and dreams. In 1992, a group of teens recorded themselves exploring the old quarry. Their camcorder captured a strange shape near the tree line, a pale figure too tall, too still. The footage was confiscated by police after a local panic. To this day, it's never resurfaced. But one of the teens, Jason, told us in an email, "I don't care if you believe me, we weren't alone up there, and it wasn't human." The Springfield Public Library removed books about local folklore in 1995. The official reason? Lack of interest. But former librarian Nancy Dean, who we met earlier in this series, claimed they were told to keep the stories from spreading. She kept her own copies. In one of them, she bookmarked a passage describing black ceremonies held on high ground beneath crooked stones. The book was printed in 1939. There's something else about Springfield. People don't stay long. Turnover rates for homes near the reservation are high, higher than the county average. Families move in, stay a few years, then go. When asked why, most say, just wasn't the right fit, but a few leave in the middle of the night. And yet, no official statement has ever acknowledged any pattern. No town hall meeting, no public memorial for Jeannette, no plaque near the cliff, only silence. The kind of silence that grows teeth when left too long, but the quiet is cracking. In 2004, a group of amateur investigators began publishing articles online. They called themselves the Reservation Watch. Over 3 years, they collected over 70 eyewitness reports of strange sightings, unexplained noises, and symbols in the woods. They also claimed to have discovered bones near the old trail, small ones. Animal, perhaps? But they were taken from the site before testing. A month later, their website vanished. The founder, Casey M., stopped answering emails, and the group dissolved. This isn't just a cold case, it's a cold town. Cold like something that's been buried too long. Cold like something that remembers, and yet people are drawn here, writers, artists, teenagers on dares. Some say they feel it before they even know the stories. The wait, the watching, the sensation that something beneath the leaves is awake. Next, we prepare to face the final questions. What happened to Jeannette DePalma? Who or what was on the cliff with her? And why do some people still hear her name in the wind? This is The Devil's Teeth. Stay with us. We've talked about the symbols, the cliffs, the silence, the fear, but behind the myth, behind the mystery, there was a girl. 16 years old. Her name was Jeannette. And this is her voice. Let's go back. Jeannette DePalma was born August 3rd, 1956. She was the second oldest of 6 children. Her family lived in a modest home on Clearfield Avenue, the kind of girl who climbed trees barefoot and sang off-key just to make you laugh. Her father, Salvatore, worked as a building foreman. Her mother, Florence, stayed home to raise the kids. Friends described Jeannette as vibrant, playful. She had a gap between her front teeth and was self-conscious about it. She collected pressed flowers and a Bible, and when she was 15, something changed. Her family says she found faith, not the Sunday morning, don't swear at the table kind of faith, something deeper. Jeannette started reading scripture every day, attending youth meetings. Talking about salvation, some of her friends drifted away. She stopped going to certain parties, stopped drinking. She started writing in a journal. None of her entries survive, but her sister, Angela, remembers one sentence Jeannette underlined again and again. I am not afraid. The Lord is with me. Some say she had a vision, struggling to stay good in a world that's not, that she claimed to feel something moving around her when she prayed in the woods. Some say she talked about a presence near the quarry, that she felt watched. Others say that's revisionist memory, that she was just a teenager finding her path. But what matters is this: Jeannette believed something was out there, and she wasn't afraid. Her last day was ordinary. She left the house around 11 m.A., telling her mother she was going to visit a friend. Like a light behind my ribs, she never arrived, and no one saw her again. We spoke with a woman named Judith. She was in the youth group with Jeannette. They weren't close, but they shared quiet moments, sitting in church basements, sipping punch from paper cups. Judith remembered something Jeannette said one night, shortly before she vanished. I think I'm meant for something, I just don't know what yet, but I feel it. You can feel it in all the stories. Jeannette didn't belong to the darkness. She resisted it, even as it circled. A girl who still slept with her bedroom window cracked on cool nights, who told her little brother monsters weren't real because she wanted him to sleep soundly, even as it whispered, even as it closed in. And maybe that's why it found her. We live in a world obsessed with the aftermath. Most of the town had moved on, or tried to. The crime scene, the theories, the horror. But Jeannette wasn't just what was done to her. She was a daughter, a friend, a believer. She mattered, and she still does. In 2004, nearly 30 years after her death, a candlelight vigil was held near the quarry. Only a few people attended, but those who came said something strange happened that night. Just before the final prayer, a strong wind passed through the trees, and one of the candles untouched relit itself. There are those who say they've heard her, in dreams, in the woods, in the moments between sleep and waking, not screaming, not begging, just calling, I am not afraid. The Lord is with me. Some people vanish, others leave something behind, a presence, a silence, a shape in the dark that looks like memory. And Jeannette DePalma, she left a voice, not always loud, not always easy to hear, but if you listen, really listen, you might hear her too. Next, we return to the beginning, to the cliff, to the ritual, to what might really have happened that night, because no story ends until it's told fully, and Jeannette's isn't finished yet. This is the Devil's Teeth. Stay with us. And so we return to the place where it all began, a slab of earth and stone, jagged and forgotten. Locals call it the Devil's Teeth, but Jeannette DePalma never called it anything. Because when she stepped onto that cliff, she didn't know it was a mouth, waiting to close. Let's walk through her last known hours. August 7th, 1972, late morning. She leaves her house in good spirits. Neighbor says she waved, smiled. She tells her mother she's heading to Springfield Avenue to visit a friend. The friend never sees her. What happens in the time between is lost. But what follows can be pieced together. Sometime between noon and 3 p.m., Jeannette is spotted near the edge of the Watchung Reservation, alone, walking. A woman walking her dog claims she saw a girl matching her description heading up toward the quarry trail. The woman didn't think anything of it until weeks later, when the papers printed Jeannette's photo. The trail leads to the bluff, uneven ground, eroded shale, nearly impassable without guidance. So how did she get there? And more importantly, why? Some believe she was lured. Others believe she followed something willingly. Now imagine the wind pushing through the trees like breath. Jeannette's hands shaking, maybe in fear, maybe in faith. She steps into the clearing, sees the stones already arranged, the crosses already planted, the book already waiting. Some say there were others there, witnesses, participants, a ritual to summon or silence something. Some say Jeannette was the offering. Others say she was the interrupter, that she came to stop it, that she knew what the place was and walked in anyway because she wasn't afraid. We'll never know what truly happened on that cliff, whether she died from hands or from something colder, older, quieter. What we know is this: she didn't run, she didn't cry. There were no signs of struggle, only arrangement, only symbols, only silence. Years later, hikers still find strange signs near that bluff. Stacked rocks in spirals, animal bones charred black, twine-wrapped sticks nailed to trees, and sometimes footprints that end where no one should have turned back. The devil's teeth is still there. The cliff still waits, and Jeannette's name still lingers on the wind. So if you ever find yourself in Springfield and you hear something call your name just beyond the trees, don't answer. Not because it isn't real, but because it might be. Jeannette DePalma was more than a mystery, more than a symbol. She was a voice, and that voice was silenced, not by death, but by forgetting. So don't forget her. Don't let her become just another name carved into folklore. Let her be the girl who walked into the dark and dared to stand there. If this story moved you, unsettled you, or made you feel something deep down you can't explain, please share it. Leave a comment below. Tell us your theory. Tell us if you've ever seen something in the woods. And if you want more true horror that digs deeper than headlines, like the video, subscribe, and help us keep these stories alive, because some stories, they don't rest easy. This was The Devil's Teeth. Thank you for watching. Stay aware, stay human, and stay out of the trees.